Hello, friends and colleagues, and welcome to the Tourism Skillshop. Well, I should also say greetings from Aberdeen. No, not Aberdeen, Washington. I am broadcasting live from Aberdeen, Scotland. I am here for a global agritourism conference. I was here with Marissa Valiant from Eat Local First, Sustainable Connections, a nonprofit out of Bellingham. She received an award here for agritourism, more specifically for digital innovation around an agritourism program that she's been utilizing across the state. So kudos to her. And State of Washington Tourism played a supporting role. We are also a member of the Eat Local First Collaborative. More on that next month in the Tourism Skill Shop, but you'll also read about it in the industry newsletter. So let me get back to our skill shop for today. This is the Tourism Skill Shop hosted by State of Washington Tourism, SWT. My name is Matthew Ozuna, and I am the Destination Development Manager at SWT. I will introduce today's webinar on visitor education and outdoor recreation with the Washington Trails Association, WTA. Please utilize the chat feature in Zoom to say hello and let us know where you are zooming in from today. Feel free to share your comments in the chat and utilize the Q&A feature as well. My colleague Marissa Petrovich is helping with the webinar today. She is the Industry Relations Coordinator at SWT. Marissa and I will do our best to organize and prioritize questions from the audience for the guest speakers near the end of the webinar. In case you don't know, the Tourism Skill Shop is an industry educational program from State of Washington Tourism. This webinar series will engage with colleagues across the tourism sector, broadening their industry knowledge, skills, and network. Each webinar will highlight a specific issue or skill for tourism professionals to ponder and discuss with industry experts. SWT usually hosts live webinars of the Tourism Skill Shop on the third or fourth Thursday of every month from 10 to 11 a.m. Skillshop webinars are free and open to all tourism stakeholders. These webinars will be recorded and shared with registrants as well as other users on the SWT YouTube channel. For Tourism Skillshop and other industry updates, follow SWT on LinkedIn and visit the SWT industry website. I mentioned that visitor education for outdoor recreation is the focus of today's Skillshop webinar. Many visitors come to Washington State for its natural wonders and outdoor recreation, but they may not be prepared for the time and distance between destinations or the permits and passes required for certain areas. Crowds, trail conditions, and weather can further complicate one's outdoor experience. Cassidy, Giampetro, and Joe Gonzalez with the Washington Trails Association will share online tools and contents to help visitors select hikes based on their interests and abilities. Tourism stakeholders can also use the WTA assets, along with other resources, expertise, and communication channels to help set visitor expectations for outdoor recreation. When destination stewards, like you and I, work together and reinforce shared messaging, visitor education becomes more effective, reducing impacts and improving recreational experiences on public lands. So before we dive into today's webinar, I want to give a little bit more or share a little bit more background about Cassidy and Joe with all of you. Cassidy is WTA's advocacy manager. Throughout her nearly 5 years at WTA, Cassidy has worked with regional partners across the state to develop shared strategies for hikers. She leads coalitions and projects that unite those who love the outdoors across common causes. So Cassidy, thank you so much. You chair a very important group, the Recreate Responsibly group from Washington State. Is there anything else that you do? I can't remember. What other projects and initiatives that are you in charge of?
Yeah, we've got quite a few. Actually, I should scroll up to see if anyone is local. I'm leading some trail strategy work in the Snoquero Highway 410 area of the state. as well as a project on the Olympic Peninsula. So if anyone in our audience is out there today, we could connect on that too.
All right. Thanks, Cassidy. And Joe, you are the Senior Communications and Marketing Coordinator at WTA. Joe moved to Washington State after completing the Pacific Crest Trail in 2016. We were just talking about that before we came online. Joe is, as a former professional backpacking guide, Joe utilizes a background in adventure travel, guiding, and ecotourism to empower hikers statewide with trail resources and outdoor culture narratives. Joe, thanks so much. And where are you coming from? What state? Where were you before Washington State?
I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, so the PCT, California, was a big part of my journey. And I used to guide in Yosemite National Park, bringing folks from all across the country to visit some of the natural wonders. But yeah, after finishing the PCT, I saw Washington, and I was like, man, it's awesome here. I got to know more, and here we are, years later.
Well, good choice. I'm happy to have you, and hopefully we can hit the trail sometime. So it's good to be with another PCT hiker. All right, Joe and Cassie, I'll bring you on in just a little bit. I want to set the scene and give folks on the call a little bit more context about the topics we'll be discussing today. So Marissa will share my quick slide deck. I only have 3 slides, folks, so make sure we have plenty of time for Joe and Cassidy. But like I said, I just want to provide more context for you all. We are talking about visitor education today, but it under a larger umbrella under visitor use management. And so I wanted to talk about a few terms and concepts or procedures before we turn it over to Joe and Cassidy. I won't get into too much detail. I'll leave the technical stuff for land managers, but it really kind of positions destination professionals like many of you on the call today. It positions you, it gives you a seat at the table. It kind of gives you the language and the knowledge to kind of better partner with land managers and other tourism stakeholders if you really want to tackle a problem like outdoor recreation or overuse, overcrowding in your destination. So Marissa, if you can go to the next slide for me, please. Thank you. A few terms. We'll talk about visitor use management strategies as well as visitor use management actions. I think everyone kind of understands what visitor capacity is. I mentioned that in the 3rd bullet point. It's really important, though, to start with an assessment and compare and contrast current conditions to desired conditions and kind of really help with your project and assessment of the problem. So once you do that, and you can really kind of tie use-related impacts to specific action items that will help you in your planning process. I want to make sure that visitor use strategies are focused on first. You really have to find a few strategies that work best for you and then kind of move into the action phase. And I have a slide where there's that distinguishes between those 2 terms. And then when necessary, and this is when you could probably work with a few land managers to talk about visitor capacity of certain sites and trails. That probably involves a few calculations that that is beyond my expertise for today, but make sure you contact your land managers for specific information on that. And then lastly, who's in charge of this? Is this a joint effort with you and land managers? Is there a volunteer group that's going to measure success or monitor KPIs? And if so, how long and in what aspects? So that's also really important to kind of hold folks accountable and to make sure this project succeeds. Okay, Marissa, next slide, please. So we should be on, yes, visitor use strategies. Here's a few. There's many, but I just want to kind of share a few examples with you before we kind of go into more detail on action. Today, we're focused a lot on education and trying to change visitor behavior. So The type of use, I'm thinking of, maybe this trail is open to hikers and bikers and horseback riders, and maybe that's too much, and you want to kind of limit the trail just to horses and horse riders and hikers. So that's the type of use that you can kind of tackle there. Modified visitor behavior, a lot of that we can probably do with visitor education and other incentives. Modify attitudes and expectations. We've talked about that today, especially with visitor education and maybe kind of in-person trail ambassadors to kind of help people on the trail, but maybe even before in visitor centers. The timing of use, whether this is during peak season or maybe it receives a lot of use in the spring when there's wildflowers. I mean, all of that, the time of day is also something to consider for that strategy. Location of use, this I think of multiple trails that gets at one destination. I'm thinking of the Goat Rocks and a meadow, alpine meadow. Instead of having everyone bottleneck to the main trailhead, there's multiple trailheads that get to the same destination. So I think that's a great example of engineering. Engineering, education, and enforcement. We'll talk about the three E's on my next slide. But you can also shut down the trail and kind of just cap the number of people on the trail with maybe permits and a timed entry to certain trails or parks. Again, these concepts and strategies will are best left with our land managers. So Marissa, if you can go to my last slide, here's our action items or visitor use management actions folks can utilize in partnership with land managers. I talked about the three E's. It's education, engineering, education, and enforcement. But you can also kind of consider site management and engineering. I'm thinking of how to use physical barriers or vegetation or rocks to maybe kind of stop folks from shortcutting trails and during switchbacks on trails up mountainsides. I think that's a good example there. Information and education, this is what we'll be doing a lot of today. I think that's something that we can do as destination professionals in the marketing space. And then regulations and enforcements. Again, I think we have to rely heavily on our land managers to kind of issue parking tickets and other things like that. But those are the three E's. This is kind of the concept. These are a few concepts that fall under a larger umbrella of visitor use management today. Again, we'll be focusing on visitor education and outdoor recreation. So now, Cassidy, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Matt. Let me get my slides up. Okay, can everyone see mine? Perfect. Cool. Well, thank you for that intro, Matt. And thanks, Marissa, and everyone here, our State of Washington Tourism attendees and audience. That was a great framework for visitor use management, and we're really going to focus in on that education and expectations piece today. So I'm excited to be chatting with you all. As Matt mentioned, we've long been connected to the State of Washington Tourism Network through Recreate Responsibly Coalition and also the annual conference. So it's nice to speak directly to the folks in the audience today. So before I begin sharing and jumping into what Joe and I have for you in this hour, I'm curious how many of you are already familiar with WTA. So Marissa, if you could put a poll up on screen, we have a couple options here. The question is, how familiar are you with WTA? And the options are, you've never heard of us. Maybe you would know our name, but not much else. Maybe you do know WTA, but you're actually not making use of our resources yet in your day-to-day work, or maybe not even day-to-day, week-to-week work. And then lastly, perhaps you're here today and you know WTA and you use the resources, and we might have a little bit of insight on how you can use them better. So I'll give another second to see if people roll in. This will be helpful for us to know. Marissa, does it look like some people have been
I
voting?
see responses coming in. Yeah.
Cool.
So we only have one person actually that's never heard of WTA, We have no one in the category of know the name, but not much else. And then the
Hmm.
biggest categories are the bottom two. We have about 7 people in the I know WTA, but don't use the resources in my work. And then we have 8 in the I know and use the resources. So I would say people are definitely familiar,
Hmm.
and looks like they could learn some more about the resources.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for reading that off. That's cool to know that most people here know of WTA and use our resources. Now I'm kind of curious, like, how do you make use of our stuff? We'll go, maybe you guys can put that in the chat, or also Joe will cover a lot of our different ways you can interact with us. So hopefully you'll take something out of that too. Okay, so even though it sounds like most people here know us, I'll start with just a high-level overview on WTA and our mission. So WTA connects everyone to the outdoors and builds a community that gives back to trails and public lands. Folks had varying answers on the poll, but maybe you best know us in different ways. A lot of people know us for our statewide trail maintenance. Also, if you look up a hike, you're probably going to reach our hiking guide, which Joe will talk more about. Maybe you've worked with our leadership development and community partnerships team. And as Matt discussed earlier, I work for WTA's advocacy department. So we've got a lot of things going on. And we also just released our most recent strategic plan, our 2026 to 2030 strategic plan, in which one of our focus areas is a commitment to build an outdoor recreation movement. And we definitely see you all as partners in this work. Our work totally intersects, and I think that that umbrella includes both of us. Okay, so our agenda for today, I'm going to spend some time on the philosophical side a little bit, talking about expectations setting and some social science support for that. Then I have a question that I'm going to pose out to you all. So we'll spend a little bit on that, and then I'll hand it over to Joe, and he's going to talk more about WTA resources and how to apply some of this stuff we're setting up. We'll have time for Q&A at the end. So I think Marissa already shared this, or Matt already shared this. Feel free to put your questions in the Q&A or the chat. I probably won't be looking at those actively, so we'll get to it at the end of the hour. And also at the end of the hour, we hope that you leave our hour today seeing your role in the value in connecting with visitors about their recreation experiences, knowing where to look for timely information on trails. So that's a big one, and also maybe have some inspiration or some sparks about what resources or partnerships might be handy to better strengthen those relationships with visitors. So we want you to feel empowered to direct visitors to the places that'll meet their expectations and improve their experiences through slight touches. And that's what we're going to focus on today. Okay, so I think I probably said the buzzword a couple times now. What is a quality outdoor experience, and why does it matter? How can you know where you sit in this process to create better experiences for visitors, right? You think, oh, okay, well, their experience on trail is their experience on trail, but there's a lot of stuff we can do prior to that to set them up for success. So I'm not going to spend too long talking about the great relationship between outdoor recreation and Washington's tourism economy, this $25.2 billion industry. It weaves your work and our work together because I'm sure if you signed on to this webinar today, you're aware of it and how significant it is. And beyond this number, we also know from statewide studies that 90% of Washingtonians get out on trail. So to answer this question, why does a quality outdoor experience matter to folks that are visiting? It's clear that international tourists come to enjoy Washington's natural beauty, and when they have great experiences on trail, they'll go back home and they're going to rave about Washington to folks wherever they're from. And for the for the domestic or even like internal to Washington traveler, you can create an even stronger connection through quality outdoor experiences, because your landscape, your area might become a staple in their annual visiting. So it's important to invest in those things. Above all, too, quality outdoor experiences strengthen our connections to our natural world. So it helps us be better caretakers of our land. So I think that's an important ripple effect of both of our works. But the variables that create a quality outdoor experience for one traveler might not be the same for another. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about that. We can't know everything, but we can try to support people for what they want to see. So Matt talked a little bit about popular trails and the framework to manage popular trails. And I imagine that some of you this question might come up for you a lot. I want to talk about the social science by nesting the quality outdoor experience within this question. Is it okay to send a visitor to a trail that is already popular? I think the short answer is yes. It is okay to send people to popular trails as long as you've made a thoughtful decision to do so. And the longer answer is that there really is no one size fits all. What matters more than the trail's popularity is the visitor's ability to recreate safely, responsibly, and respectfully wherever they're going. So I mentioned that sending people to popular trails works when you've been thoughtful about it. What does it mean to be thoughtful? To understand if it's wise to send someone to a popular trail, there's a couple of questions you can ask yourself. This is obviously a non-comprehensive list. The first one is, who is the land manager and what amenities and experiences do they offer? Again, that's a huge tie-in to what Matt was talking about, the VUM process, because different land managers are going to manage their lands for different experiences. So I actually have my next slide, we'll talk about that a little bit more. Similarly, does popularity mean that more maintenance investments support visitor impact on the land? So maybe there's actually more developed restrooms and parking lots. And so this place has higher capacity to invite visitors. And then lastly, underline, because it's kind of our topic today, will this trail give the visitor the experience they're looking for? It's a general question, but it's good to unpack. So I'm not going to read all the bullet points off of this slide, but this is just meant to illustrate that first question I mentioned, that different land managers are going to manage their lands differently. So when we're answering that question, what is a visitor looking for? And then also when you're understanding what destinations you're sending visitors to, it's important to have this, to be knowledgeable about, what lands these trails are on. So land managers generally offer a different level of service to their trails, or potentially they do based on what agency they are. So knowing what lands you're on is important because experiences may not be interchangeable. For example, if you want to avoid parking issues at Paradise Visitor Center at Mount Rainier National Park, and you say, oh, okay, well, why don't you go to this Forest Service trail instead? Maybe they will avoid the parking issues because they have to go up like a gravel Forest Service road or whatever it is. Those might be very different experiences. So even if they're in the same area, even if it's the same, forest, knowing what land manager the trail is being managed by is a great way to set expectations, your own expectations about what the visitor might expect. So WTA's hiking guide can help you understand that. Joe will go more into that, but you can look that information up online. Okay, so more on the good experiences vary part. A popular trail is not inherently a bad thing. In fact, popularity implies that there are many good reasons why people are choosing a trail. And a sticking point that I want to share with you, one that I think is actionable, is that a quality experience, including ideas about crowding, are very subjective, and the social science shows us that. So I'll read this quote on the screen right now. Different recreationists seek different experiences in wilderness, and the relationship between amount of use and experience quality varies with the experience being sought. That seems like a fancy way to say if your expectations are different, your experience will be different. So science shows that an increase in visitor satisfaction can be by setting expectations alone. Someone who is surprised to see so many visitors on a popular trail might interpret that more negatively than the same individual who was told to expect that many visitors, and then, the experience meets their expectations. So that variable of quality is related to just the expectation setting. So if you think about this interaction, you're chatting with a visitor and they say that they want a trail with lower elevation, a bathroom at a trailhead, and a beautiful view. And just the place you want to send them, but you also tell them this trail tends to be popular on the weekends. By stating that alone and calibrating their expectations, you're setting them up to enjoy their experience more. And that's backed by science. Like the quote we have here, there's recreation ecology and social science behavioral research that shows that. If they hear that from you and they are like, no, what I want out of my experience is solitude, then great. They know automatically that they should have another conversation with you about where else, what alternatives may exist. Or on the other hand, they're like, okay, this place is going to be popular. It sounds awesome. It has all the other variables, and they're excited to go out there with the expectation that there's going to be other people on trail. So small connections that prepare visitors for their experience matter, those slight touches. Okay, my next quote here actually comes from a paper of the International Visitor Use Council. It's from their 2019 report, The Relationship Between the Amount of Visitor Use and Social Impacts. And I mention it by name just because it's actually a pretty good report that has a lot of actionable advice and frameworks for managers or folks like us who are interfacing with visitors. So I'll read it right now. Preferred number of encounters is a better predictor of perceptions of crowding than the estimated actual number of encounters. Therefore, managers need to know about user preferences and perceptions of crowding, as well as the actual conditions on the site. So here you can see that getting to know what a specific visitor is looking for and setting those expectations actually trumps your expectations of what the trail may be. You may have it in your head thinking, oh, this trail is really crowded, or this is the kind of experience they'll get on trail. But actually hearing from them about what they seek, that can be more important at times than some of the expectations you're coming in with. So this quote has a directive for managers. I think it's relevant to our work, that getting to know the trails near you and the experience part of what they offer can help you support visitor needs. Okay, so what does this mean for you? This little dipping our toes into what some of the research says. So as visitor centers run by our land managers become less stable in their staffing or their open hours, it's even more critical that folks like us feel equipped and trained to help people who want to get outside, get the information they need for safe and responsible experiences. So there's many ways to connect with visitors through direct conversation. I think that's a lot of what I shared today was like, when you're able to have those conversations with the visitors, these are some helpful things to consider. But if you also lack that capacity, there are lots of online tools. Joe will obviously get into that, and other strategies that can help with that. So you may be folks' gateway to getting outside, and I think there's lots of ways we can lean into that with different creativity. So I have a couple of ideas here. You might be thinking of your own. You might already be implementing these. And we have the resources to help with this kind of stuff. So one of them could be developing a recreation corner. If you have an actual place that you're managing or you're running or you're interfacing with visitors, you can have a tablet or a page set up. I actually was just at the library and they had the WTA website corner already set up for folks getting outside. You can connect with local gear libraries to rent and have gear on hand. WTA has 2 gear libraries, and I know there's also local versions of this. So for folks who are coming fresh and brand new, if you're sensing that they could use some support and having the safe things they need, there's ways to have that on hand or to partner to have it on hand. You can also offer educational materials like brochures on WTA or your local recreation organizations, and maybe partner with folks to develop specific ones if you know what your visitors need. And then lastly, keeping up-to-date trail conditions and reports for visitors to see, including seasonal information. So Joe is going to chat more about this, but obviously conditions change a lot. I know that's a question that comes up for this group, is how do I even keep pulse on what's open and what's going on in the outdoors? WTA does a lot of work to get updated resources available to you. So there's ways you can print that out or have it available to empower you to feel like you can give the visitor the most timely information. Okay, so Joe is going to unpack a lot of how to increase or enhance the visitor education capacity through WTA tools. But before I hand it over to him, we have a question for you, which is, what do you wish you had to better prepare visitors? This question can help us think through some of the gaps that are available. Maybe Joe will cover some of these things or not, but as you're interfacing with people, what do you feel like is missing? What tools do you think could help you better prepare folks to get outside? And I'm going to check the chat out in the Q&A as your insight rolls in.
Good question, Cassidy. I mean, the thing that's on top of my mind is, and it's probably the obvious, and maybe it's kind of a cop out, but funding, an extra staff person.
Mm,
Um, but I'm sure, maybe it's just a matter of just tools on your website that folks just don't know about or that can be used better with some instruction from you and Joe.
yeah, like funding to be able to lean into that partnership capacity or have more touches. And
Yeah.
I saw Matt come in kind of supporting that, more consistent and frequent touch points. And Matt, feel free to expand on that more. I think that's a similar concept. Is like, how can we connect with visitors more frequently, the folks that are passing through using our resources?
Well, I was going to mention the tourism ambassador, or not tourism ambassador, trail ambassador program.
Hmm.
It's great to have these online tools, but more touch points in the field on at
Yeah.
trailheads, friendly reminders, whether it's kind of, or even to kind of help with enforcement, parking, leave no trace, stuff like that. I mean, that would be a great resource. And there are some of those programs around the state, not to kind of go down a rabbit hole, but those things do exist in pilot phases, correct, Cassidy?
Yeah, they've been going for a couple years, but you're right that the expansions have sometimes been piloted.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's true. Those are really great touch points on trail. I see some more things rolling into the chat, more social media posts, reels with specific information, the human aspect, focusing on their experience and showing what kind of experience someone else could have. Joe is an expert on that. And I see a Q&A come in, more connection points with visitors. Not everyone reads every page or line on a website. Not everyone reads a sign. Completely true. Yeah. I think we know that those conversations are often the most impactful and also they take the most amount of capacity. Yeah, there's a lot of marketing that comes into this, right? Like, how do we make sure we get people the information they need and that they'll absorb it, especially if we can't always, the intervention can't always be a conversation. Other thoughts? Anything else that you feel like comes up with your visitors? Maybe it's also, I tend to notice that visitors are less informed about this thing. And I also see some great stuff rolling in the comments about future connections from um is it Desiree or Desire and Kristen. Oh, and there's Terry. I see Terry, who I've worked with in the past. Yeah, some folks from Mount Rainier. Yeah, lots of commentary on social media and how folks can get wildly different mentioning. Yep, a call for us to work together better. Awesome. Well, I hope we can get Matt and Marissa some of the chat offline so that Joe and I can follow up on some of this. But thanks for those who popped their answers in the chat. It's great to know because it helps us. It inspires us to think about what resources might be helpful to you all. And also, it we can explore more partnership opportunity and what gaps we're seeing since we interface with people a little differently sometimes. Okay, so thanks for indulging that one. I'm seeing more stuff come in the chat too. And I'm actually going to hand it over to Joe now to talk more about the application of some of the stuff I discussed.
Awesome. Thanks so much for handing it off, Cassidy. And good morning, everyone. Thanks for submitting your comments and thoughts in the chat here. Quick recap. My name is Joe Gonzalez. I work on WT's communications team. I do a lot of marketing. So if you've ever engaged with our social media, read our magazine, checked out our website, chances are you've engaged with me or my work in some capacity. But in a previous career before I worked at WTA, I was a triple crown. Well, I am a triple crown through hiker. So I've hiked the big three long trails in the U.S. And in a former career, I used to be a professional backpacking guide. I also used to design and sell custom adventure travel itineraries for REI and a couple other big travel companies. So that's just to say that active travel, hiking, outdoor rec has been top of mind for my entire career. So now that we have an idea for how much or how each of you is currently providing trails resources, you're familiar with WTA and some of the challenges you're facing, let's talk about how we can further maximize our value as industry leaders. So as Cassidy mentioned, to create a good experience, visitors should be adequately prepared, and preparation is going to create lower impact and more responsible visits for your for your travelers. Pardon me. Now, here's where you come in. Really, you can be an information gateway to help shepherd visitors to the right destinations. And WT's Hiking Guide, WT's Trip Reports, and our Trailblazer mobile app and Trails resources can help you get there. So, what is the hiking guide? That's what I want to talk to you about first. WTA's hiking guide is the comprehensive database of hikes in Washington state. It includes 4,000 trails statewide, and it's growing, including trails in 11 subregions. So, no matter where you are in Washington, the hiking guide is going to have a trail for you, whether that's in the North Cascades or Eastern Washington, Southwest Washington, whatever. We're going to have options available. And then each trail's entry in the hiking guide is written by a local expert and is crowdsourced via user submitted info. So for hikers by hikers. And then it's all vetted by WTA staff, myself, and my peers. Now that you have an idea for what the hiking guide is, let's just cover real quick what it is not. The hiking guide is not the end all be all of trail difficulty. Our website rates difficulty on concrete metrics like distance, mileage, elevation changed, and other factors. But there are some variables that might affect your visitor's experience, like personal fitness, gear, weather. Those things can make their experience a lot more difficult. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is that difficulty on a hiking trail is very subjective. Our hiking guide is also not a foolproof way to predict trail traffic on a specific day. You can use the resources we're going to go over to get an idea for where folks are hiking in general, but it's not a one for one, this trail is popular and this trail is not type of tool. It's really going to inform you. You're still going to be the local expert. Obviously, if it's a sunny day in April and you have a bunch of wildflowers blooming, it's the weekend, you're going to have a busy trail, right? So just keep in mind your own personal lens and perspective as we go through these tools. So let's talk about how to actually use the hiking guide. We're going to go through a lot of meat and potatoes, just how to put the resources in your hands and how to wield them so that you are the expert for your local region. So first step is to go over to WTA.org/hiking guide. When you pop over there, you're going to see a giant list of trails. Like I said, it's over 4,000 and growing. So it could be a lot to take in. That's why I recommend checking out the filters on the side of your screen to start your search. You can filter by region. Like I said, we have 11 regions statewide. So an example could be like the Olympic Peninsula is its own region, North Cascades is its own region, Eastern Washington's its own region, and then you can filter by subregions from there. Additionally, you can filter by things like trail distance, elevation change, or features. Like if you love rivers and lakes and water features, those are things that you can plug in to find trails that have those things. Same thing goes with fall foliage. And then there are additional filters for things like parking passes, which park pass you're going to need, and wheelchair friendly trails as well. Finally, there's a keyword search. So if you already know the name of the trail that you're looking for, you can just punch that in and find the hiking guide for it. So great. You found a trail, and once you go over there to the hiking guide entry, you're going to learn everything you need to know before you head out the door. So at the top of the page, we're going to have the most important things that you should know, including which region the trail's in, the difficulty, elevation gain, and mileage. And then you can also look to see what features the trails offer that are good for you and your party, including if it's like good for kids or if the trail's dog friendly. Now, the guide itself also details background info on the trail, including features, local history, and more. Like I said, this is written by volunteer hiking guide correspondents with WTA or WTA staff. So there's a lot of colloquial flair, adding that kind of local perspective and flavor to it. Um, Each trail's hiking guide entry also has links to weather forecasts and trailhead directions, so we really try to serve it up to you on a silver platter, just a click away. And then finally, if you have a WTA My Backpack account, you can find a hike and you can save it for later, maybe for a rainy day, maybe for a sunny day. I've submitted many trip reports and used these tools that we're going over today to kind of propel my hiking adventures in Washington State, and I have a giant wish list of hikes added to my backpack account for later. Great. Okay, so we went over the list format of the hiking guide. Now I want to talk to you about a tool that we pair with the hiking guide for all of our visual learners, and that's the Hike Finder map. So you go over to wta.org/map. I like this to visualize where things are statewide. I mean, ideally, I'm going to be looking for trails that are close to me or close to areas that I plan on visiting. And then you can use the same filters that are on the hiking guide for the Hike Finder map, like distance, elevation change, and more. I'm going to go to the hiking guide first, but a lot of hikers I talk to really love the Hike Finder map. You might have a lot of fun there too. So after the call, I recommend you pop in there and tool around, see what's near you. Really useful tool, but there's more. Unfortunately, summer in Washington also can mean wildfires and smoky conditions. We are already seeing wildfires pop up statewide even before summer solstice. So it's really just a bummer reality of living and hiking in Washington. You just have to be ready for wildfire conditions. So we created map layers on our Hike Finder map to help you find your way. There's two of them. There's one for wildfires and there's one for AQI forecast. I like to have them both on, as you can see on the screen, to get an idea for conditions statewide. Now, I want to mention these are just basic tools. So before you go on a hike, you should definitely check the hiking guide for the trail you're curious about to learn if the trail's even open, if there's a closure, and then you should also check with land managers to learn if there are burn bans, like if you're allowed to have a campfire or if you're allowed to have a stove with an open flame. So know before you go. And then finally, even though now it's summer and we're talking about wildfires and AQI filters and things like that, during the spring and winter, we swap it out for a different a snow depth layer. So there won't be any AQI or wildfire, but you will be able to use the snow depth layer to get an idea for snow levels statewide. That way, hikers can just have an idea if you are a winter destination. Okay, so maybe we found a couple hikes that we're interested in and we want to further our learning journey, dig a little bit deeper and learn what folks are seeing statewide. That's where WTA trip reports come in handy. WTA trip reports are essentially journaled experiences that are crowdsourced from everyday hikers. A good trip report could share info like trail or road conditions, maybe bathroom accessibility, if flowers are blooming, things like that. Like I mentioned, I filed, I think it's like 95 trip reports over my duration at WTA, but overall we have over 280,000 plus trip reports that have been filed to date, and more are coming in on the regular. They're all vetted and read by WTA staff. I spent a lot of time reading WTA trip reports to learn where you and others are going. Just go to WTA.org/trip reports to see where folks are hiking and what they're talking about. You can filter by hike name and region, common theme here with a lot of our tools, trying to make it simple for you. And then, of course, there's that keyword search. So the keyword search is fun because if you want to learn, let's say, where folks are seeing ticks or maybe bears statewide, you can type in tick or bear, and then you can see where folks are seeing them. And maybe there's even a nice photo of what folks are talking about. And then if you're on your journey and you're trying to use trip reports to discover where you want to go next or where you're going to send your travelers next, but you can't find a recent trip report for the trail you're curious about, don't fret. You can use the date filters to check dates from previous years to see what folks saw in the past. That way you have some sort of idea of what you or your traveler should expect before they hit trails. Okay, I kind of alluded to this, but trip reports are also a really fun way to give back. They're kind of like your own personal hiking diary. So it's fun to kind of, hey, look back. These are all the hikes that I did. And here's what I saw, and here's the fun memories. But on top of that, they also enable other hikers to get outside because other hikers are seeing the fun that you're having or the not fun that you're having, and they're going to learn from it. That's on the person to person level, but sometimes land managers will also read trip reports, and that helps land managers and WTA trail crews learn where trail maintenance and TLC is most needed on trails statewide. Occasionally, a land manager will go a step above and they will file a trip report from their own account. And that's what we have up on the screen here. This is an example from the Cle Elum Ranger District Trail Crew in the Alpine Lakes Wilderness. And here they're sharing how winter storms knocked down a bunch of trees near, I think it's the highest lake trailhead, including the wilderness sign, which is kind of sad. But as you can see, a bunch of hikers found it really valuable. And yeah, just hearing it directly from the horse's mouth, so to speak, about what folks should expect before they go out. Super useful. Okay, great. We've covered a lot of resources. That's all well and good, but how do you access them? What if I told you that you could take the power of WTA's hiking guide, hike finder map, and trip reports in the palm of your hand with the Trailblazer mobile app for mobile? Trailblazer is free and available for iOS and Android. It was developed by our incredible team of volunteer devs using all the data that I just went over in our hiking guide and trip reports. It has everything the hiking guide has, so you can filter for trails, you can save hikes to your account for later, you can get resources for trailhead directions, weather forecasts, and more. Plus, you can access offline trip reports and trail descriptions. And real quick, I know we're talking about a lot of WTA resources right now, but realistically, you and a lot of your travelers and visitors are probably going to have All Trails downloaded. All Trails is an awesome, valuable, and very viable tool. I use it myself all the time, and that's fine. I think just keep in mind how WTA resources can help add extra value. I think it's best recommended for most positive results that you pair the two in tandem to get a good idea holistically of what the larger community is saying. Okay, we talked about how to find trails. Now let's talk about how to have fun experiences on trail. And you're going to do that by developing your trail skills. So, Trail Smarts is what I want to mention to you now. It's essentially WTA's database of hiking skills and resources for staying safe, improving on-trail experiences, and lessening visitor impact on natural spaces. Trail Smarts is a pretty complete catalog. We've got resources for everything. So that goes everything from basic hiker 101s like how to check forecast, gear breakdowns like which hiking boots are right for me, how-tos for advanced skills like macro photography, and more. It's also updated seasonally. Like I'm literally the WT employee who updates it. I updated it last week before solstice. So this summer on Trail Smarts, you'll find resources like for how to hike in burn areas, how to navigate tricky air quality, campfire best practices, and more. My main takeaway with Trail Smarts is just no matter where you are in your learning journey, whether you would consider yourself to be a novice hiker or an expert hiker, there's going to be something for you to find to learn on Trail Smarts. Just go to WTA.org/Trail Smarts to get started. Nice. So WTA is pretty much a one-stop shop for most things you should know before you hit trails in Washington. But for everything else we can't cover, we recommend reaching out to other experts. So a couple partner resources I want you to consider would be the immediate land manager. They are ultimately the ones who manage the land that the trails are on. So it's not a bad idea to reach out to them if you can't find what you need on WTA. We mention the land manager for each trail on each trail's respective hiking guide entries. So you can get an idea for who manages that, whether it's the state or a county or the federal government, et cetera. Additionally, road conditions can often be a larger impediment than actual trail conditions, which is why I recommend you check out the Washington State Department of Transportation. They share a lot about road conditions, very up to date. Their social channels are also very informative. And as a social media manager, they're really funny and entertaining. So totally recommend you check out WizDot if you don't already. If you hike in snow or avalanche conditions, once again, if you're a winter or shoulder season destination, check out the Northwest Avalanche Center. That's NWAC. They have a lot more information about avalanche conditions. I mean, WT, I mentioned we have our snow depth layer. It doesn't show avalanche danger. So you want to go to NWAC if you want to learn a little bit more about that. There's also various friend groups statewide. You could check out maybe Visit Rainier if you're going to Rainier, Metro Valley Trails Coalition if you're going to Methow, things like that to keep in mind if you can't find what you need at WTA proper. All right, finally, I just want to serve you up on a silver platter a little bit of information about passes and permits. Matt and Cassidy have mentioned this previously. What pass do I need is one of the most common questions we get asked at WTA. Chances are you've been asked that many times as well. If you're a visitor to the state especially, it can be a little confusing. So I'm just going to give you the quick and dirty rundown. Let's compartmentalize it. You have lands that are managed by the state, and then you have lands that are managed by the federal government. So for lands that are managed by the state, that's going to look like Washington State Parks, Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife managed lands, and Washington State Department of Natural Resources managed lands. Washington State Discover Pass will get you parking and entry to all of those state managed lands. So if you recreate avidly in Washington, Discover Pass is pretty much a must-have. That's state lands. Now, to talk a little bit about federal lands, I wanted to start with the Northwest Forest Pass. The Northwest Forest Pass will gain you entry to national forest trailheads in Washington and Oregon with facilities. That's trailheads that have like toilets, picnic tables, etc. But that's mainly only for national forests. It won't get you into national parks, which is why if you're going to be recreating on federal land, I recommend you just go the extra mile and get an America the Beautiful Pass, aka a National Park Pass. That includes entry to all federally managed lands. That includes national forests, which the Northwest Forest Pass has. So it's that and more. It's also Bureau of Land Management and, of course, national parks. So if you're even going to a couple national parks or national forests within a year, it's usually pretty much worth getting the America the Beautiful Pass because it has the Northwest Forest Pass and then some rolled into it. Okay, taking it home. A couple quick reminders to recap. Visitor experience matters because happy visitors will have an emotional attachment and personal investment to an area, meaning they're more likely to revisit you and steward the area that you're in. To create a good experience, visitors should be adequately prepared. So preparation is going to create lower impact. It's going to make more responsible visits. You can also help shepherd your visitors to the right destination by serving as essentially an information gateway for them and having access to WTA resources like trip reports and other educational materials will help you stay up to date and make you look like an expert that you are. So that's why we recommend using them. You might even consider developing some sort of little corner or like curated resource to these resources with your own personal flair or spin on it. I recommend just taking the stuff that we shared with you today and curating in your own voice. So that could look like a brochure for you or your business. That could be an email packet with links you send to visitors. It could maybe be an iPad in your lobby, or maybe it lives internally and it's just a personalized recommendation conversation that you have over the concierge desk. Really, whatever's going to work for you and your